All right. Welcome to another Sunday Superversive live stream. I'm your host, Benjamin Wheeler, and today I'm with your co host, Anthony Marquetta. Anthony, how are you doing today?
Well, as you know, Ben, I've never had a bad day in my life.
And I envy you for it every day. I think about it, I dream about it, never having a bad day in my life. Amazing. Outstanding.
Basically, a form of insanity. Uh, anyway,
Yeah, today we're having just a random game stream talking about video games we're playing, have played, want to play, or are watching Let's Plays of. Just to, because we
yeehaw.
haven't had one in a little bit. Uh, I recently discovered Class of '09, which is one of the funniest sociopath visual novels I've seen in a very long time. Um, Not that I would recommend buying it or playing it because everyone involved is evil, and I can't actually morally defend it in any way, shape, or form. Um, but I'm enjoying it. It's about these characters who, let's be real, they're just evil characters doing evil things in a nihilistic frenzy. And you know what? It's strangely a palate cleanser because there is quite a bit of honesty there. All the characters are evil in some way, shape, or form, and they don't even pretend to have morals. They reference churches, but they don't even understand what they are, and they just think it's some kind of social club. Which, for the year that it's supposed to be set in, '09, yeah, that's about right. Uh, Quite frankly, it's pretty realistic because there were a bunch of movements at that time that was totally like about seeker driven churches. And, don't offend people. And a whole bunch of other stuff that make me gag irrationally. Um, Anthony, is there any like Catholic version of this? That sort of thing? I'm sure there is.
Um,
Anytime there's a priest with a guitar.
I don't know of the specific phenomenon that you're talking about. I can't think of anything, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm not trying. I'm not trying to be triumphalist. I just like the phenomenon of seeker-led experiences. I, I don't know.
Well, like it's
Maybe
one. Sorry, keep going.
no, just like I guess maybe sort of. I don't know. Go ahead.
This causes me pain, and I regret bringing it up. Uh, but no, yeah, there was a quite a big Protestant movement for that. I assume that there is a Catholic response. It's just that one, you don't really see it while you're in it, and two, you got to explain the priests leading mass with a badly played guitar. Uh, like he's trying to play the solemn music, and then like he just plays a few notes of Freebird. Um, y-
My current favorite video game is of course the Bible, which just got the Joshua trivia update.
oh wow, that's pretty great. Uh, does it like let you kill all the Canaanites you want, or is that like not a high score anymore? Did they patch that out?
That was patched out.
No, that was my best part of it.
They just added the Deuterocanon. The two new Bible
No,
translations were added, including the Catholic Deuterocanon. They added 677 new trivia questions.
Anthony.
Uh,
Anthony, I've already played this game for more than 2 hours on Steam. I can't get my money back.
when users get a perfect score on any quiz, they now unlock Jar of Mana, which can be used to unlock any quiz which the user does not currently have access to. Amazing.
I Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about that. All I can think of is like I don't know
I,
what I'm
I
thinking of.
want the people listening to know that I am talking about the actual Bible that I just bought that I own on Steam. I didn't just buy it; I've had it for a while.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Like Steam just sells the Bible, and they make it a game by having trivia.
I assume it's a publisher on Steam and not actually Valve Incorporated. Just saying.
Oh yeah, obviously. I mean, that's just how it works.
Hmm. And I was being sarcastic about the things about killing Canaanites. I don't know. I couldn't think of a good segue.
I was being sarcastic. I wouldn't actually kill Canaanites unless God ordered me to directly. Uh,
Ooh,
obviously.
obviously.
No, yeah, let's see. Game stream. To go back to your question of is there a Catholic equivalent? I mean, I guess like in a sense the entire, spirit of Vatican II post-Vatican movement uh was kind of very me focused, me centric. Like one of the whole controversies that arose out of it was should the priest face the people or not? Which it sounds like a very inside baseball controversy, and in a sense it is. But it's also like an entire attitude thing because it goes to like, so what's the purpose of the mass? Are you directing the mass to God or are you directing the mass to the congregation?
Right.
Because if you're directing the mass to the congregation, then that is a very different thing.
Yes.
And it just kind of, yeah, even the whole like the whole guitar masses, you got to understand that like a lot of what people complain about in a vacuum is not technically in and of itself automatically bad. The
Sure.
problem is like the attitude that surrounds it. Like I have been to masses that have used guitars, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
uh at shrines, but they were beautifully said masses. They used the guitar because they didn't have instruments there. They used the guitar as their instrument. They sang very nice hymns. The people there were reverent. The priest was orthodox, and it was fine. It's more the idea of like the idea behind we're gonna have a guitar mass as if like you're gonna try and make it fun now. And the mass can be many things, but I think that if you're thinking of it as a fun experience, you've kind of lost the plot.
Right.
So yes, like I guess there's this whole me centric movement post Vatican II that kind of infected the churches is
Yeah.
how I would describe it.
Yeah. I guess that's close enough because I guess in man, this is basically nostalgia for me and not in a great way. Because at the time I was in a house church that was the Lord was doing something with it, but I could not tell you what. I'm sure, like it's one of those things where like I look back on it and I'm like something was happening. I don't know what though. You know, it's like one of those things. Um, for anyone who kind of gets that, I guess. Uh, there's so like this game probably class of '09 had absolutely no idea what it was doing when it like hit it just right for me where none of the child participants actually know what's going on and just use it as like a harvest fair thing and it's like I'm not a religious girl, and then blank blank some foul thing um, with a response to kill yourself.
I
uh,
mean, it's kind of funny though.
yeah,
It's very darkly funny. Don't get me wrong,
right, right.
but it is kind of funny.
It's got something to it, I guess. I don't know. Uh, but it's like
Okay.
it's like completely meaningless to them. It's just a bunch of nonsense. There's no explanation of anything of what's being provided or what information, what any of it actually means. Jesus is just some random dude the adults talk about, and everyone's more focused on Percocets than I don't know anything else. Uh, I don't know. I just find it interesting. The dialogue's kind of funny, and I kind of like miserable people suffering. So, um, I'm enjoying watching Let's Plays. Do I
I
recommend?
kind of like miserable people suffering. I get you.
Yeah, me too. So it's like don't buy this game, but also like the Let's Play is pretty funny. It's well
There
written.
are certain games I consider like let's play games, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Uh, like one of the games was that I have in mind was Soma, which was really big in the aughts.
yeah,
If you remember that they were made by the Amnesia people.
yeah.
It was a horror game, and it's a game that, to be honest with you, didn't look like it had particularly fun gameplay to me anyway. Like there wasn't a whole lot to the gameplay. Uh, but it was really interesting to watch because the story of Soma was very, very, very good. Uh, what's funny though is that the playthrough I watched was a Cryotic playthrough, and then I looked him up. Like I just found the playthrough, and I happened to like Cryotic. I'd heard him do like a To the Moon playthrough, which we've discussed on stream before, you know.
Hmm.
And I just liked his Let's Plays. And then like he had kind of disappeared. He was really big. He was in there up there with like PewDiePie for a while. They were like part of the big three, him, PewDiePie, and Markiplier with Let's Players. And I'm like, hey, what happened to Cry? And then I looked it up, and it turned out there was this massive scandal involving him like hitting on underage girls or something,
The
or he might have actually had an underage girlfriend.
the
And
classic maneuver for a YouTuber who isn't you know keeping
like
themselves
it
away
was,
from that.
I want to be clear here. I am laughing not because it's actually funny. It was honestly real. Like I am laughing because it's like, oh, that's what happened. Like it was actually really bad. Like, to be clear, this is one of those things like, no, I am fully in favor of quote unquote canceling, if you want to use that term, cry. Like, I think that is the appropriate reaction to hearing this because it was like really bad. It
Right.
was like people were like, hey, something's weird with his girlfriend, and looked into it. And she was like way underage, and then he gave this long, rambly apology, non-apology apology, and then he just like disappeared from the internet as people were like, "Dude, like you should go to jail." Uh, because someone's like, "What is with this apology? You should turn yourself into the police." It's just really bad. And I'm like, "Oh, so that's what happened to Cryotic. I guess that explains why you don't see him anymore." Uh, Now, luckily, I am not the sort of person to idolize YouTubers to the extent that it affects me, particularly if any of them end up being less than stellar people. I am able to compartmentalize in that way.
Mm.
But it was pretty bad, I gotta say.
I
In short, I would otherwise recommend Cry's Let's Play of Soma, but I'm not really sure if I can in good conscience.
No, I mean, yeah, but also it's like, do we know like which Let's Play he was working on?
Do we know? What do
No,
you mean?
like as in like when he met her, when he started grooming her. Is there a
Yeah, who knows?
timeline for this? It's like I see so many of these things. It's like, does it like, it's like one of those things where I'm like grateful that I don't have any fame or anything like that. It's like, do these people just like show up? Hi, I'm your FBI mandated underage girlfriend. You know, we'll be plotting
Yeah,
the destruction of your career in like 3 years. I really hope you get a good lawyer before then. 99% of the people who go to jail don't get a good. Like it's like one of the like as if it's like a salesman tactic for these things. Like
I get
this
you.
this disgusting behavior of people like with fame. It's like I don't know who you are. I didn't know Cryotech or anything like that. The name is vaguely familiar. You and others have talked about him. But then it's like looking
I
at
mean, there's nothing to the guy. Literally, like I didn't know a thing about him except that I liked a couple of his Let's Plays.
yeah, and
I have
that's the
no emotions
yeah.
over him. Like, whatever.
But it's like like there are whole YouTuber like genres that's just other YouTubers are dating somebody they shouldn't or are part of a scam or are virulently racist of some kind that is not acceptable. Um, etc., etc., etc. And
The
it's
bad type of racism,
right,
not the cool type.
right, the socially normative type, and it's like I just want to not put an asterisk to a creator, which is you know why I'm very careful about Pinkerton's ghosts and other things like that, because it's like, what is this gonna look like when I'm in court, in
I
The
mean,
Hague
let's
or
be honest
whatever.
though, we already have an asterisk next to our names,
Yeah, it's
which
true.
is whatever. I mean, our reach is inevitably going to be limited,
Yeah,
and I am okay with that. I am willing to accept that as a consequence,
yep,
but I get your point.
yep.
Anyway, on that note, back to video games.
We were talking about video games, Anthony. We were. We were.
Uh, Slay the Princess. I played that recently. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. It was a good game, I guess.
So,
So it was like the way I would describe it is like a horror visual novel,
right.
right? So people were comparing it to the a horror version of the Stanley Parable, which is kind of interesting because for people who have played the Stanley Parable, it is almost a horror game already. Like it's a
I
it's a
thought it was
very
funny.
it is funny.
Oh,
That's why I said it's almost a horror game already. I agree. The Stanley Parable is quite funny, but it's also almost a horror game. Uh, Especially if you've ever seen the Stanley Parable Deluxe playthroughs. I haven't played it because the Stanley Parable on that subject we were on earlier, I quickly realized is one of those games that there's literally no point in buying because you can
yeah,
get everything out of playing it in watching a let's play of it. Which, by the way, is kind of my main problem with visual novels in the sense of like,
yeah.
is there any point in me actually buying this game instead of just watching someone else play it? Like, what do I get out of experiencing the game myself?
Right.
Uh, I can't really think of anything.
I mean,
So,
it's the parasocial relationship is what it is. Uh, like,
but this is entirely not a joke, by the way, and you're
yeah.
absolutely right. Uh, like that is what you would get, and I have no interest in that. So,
Oh,
you know. But I did play Slay the Princess. Like I said, the Stanley Parable is one of those things. I got the original, I enjoyed it, but also it made me realize I was not going to get deluxe because there's really no point in getting deluxe.
right. It's
Uh,
yeah. Like just to talk about that for a second. Like I played Katawa Shoujo back in the day, back when 4chan was a little bit more of a unified place. Uh, and it was interesting because it was, I had never played visual novels before then, and having this sort of thing was like, huh, pretty neat. And then I put it down and never played it again, because quite frankly, a TV Tropes article was more than able to tell me everything that went on. Katawa Shoujo is literally translated disability girls. It's about these girls with physical disabilities and you date them. It was more unique because it was 4chan working together for a project um, that wasn't destructive or creepy or anything else like that. Um, it's one of those things that's more interesting for the circumstances surrounding it than it is for anything else, really. And it's like one of the things that kind of got people was that they started developing, the parasocial relationship, with the girls in it and stuff like that, and they would, basically create a lot of fan fiction, fan art, like they're, a Harry Potter fan or something like that, or a My Little Pony fan, or anything else like that. So it's like I understand why people do it, and there's a pleasure in being the one to actually make the choices, and not necessarily the guy on the screen. Um, because it does make you feel kind of different when you're watching somebody else's choices, make the decisions and not necessarily not necessarily your own hands, I guess. Because like if you were watching some cryotech decision, it might not necessarily be the same decision that you'd make. You know.
I suppose, but I guess my problem with these sorts of games in terms of buying them and experiencing them is that part of it is you want to try and see everything the game has to offer. The Stanley Parable, especially, is predicated on the idea that you will
Yeah.
replay it over and over until you get every possible ending. In that case, you are going to eventually make every decision. You know, I guess the benefit of a Let's Play with an entertaining Let's Player, a good one, like, I don't really like Markiplier
Oh.
particularly. I don't really have any opinion on the guy. I know people who think he's like the saintly man. I know people who think he's actually terrible. I don't really care about him either way. I've never looked into it in any detail, but
Right.
I just don't find him particularly entertaining. Like,
Right.
I don't like his style. Yeah, I don't like PewDiePie's style either, for that matter.
Sure.
In terms of current Let's Players who I actually enjoy watching, although they definitely lean left. I enjoy Save Data Team and their Apollo Justice and their Ace Attorney series with an actual lawyer. They do lean left. However, the real appeal of their show is not the fact that they have an actual lawyer on their stream who is actually not that great.
Huh.
It's the fact that they have an actual voice actor on their stream who is excellent. He makes it very entertaining, so I like them. Save Data.
Mm.
I like Pixel Partners, which is a boyfriend girlfriend duo, and it's good, I think, to have a female voice on there for female characters a lot of the time. Uh, so those are my recommendations, if you're wondering. But I don't like the over the top style of PewDiePie and Markiplier. But
I don't know.
so if you're,
Well, like,
it's a
yeah.
personal thing. Obviously, they're incredibly popular, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm, you know, in the majority here. It's just a personal preference. It's why I liked Cryotic back in the aughts because he was, you know, he had he has like a deep calming voice and he kept a much more level head than Markiplier tended to. But
See, I liked
the
it. That was the thing. Like, I liked his emotions and stuff like that. Screaming because he got spooked by Freddy's Fazbear and stuff like that.
sure, like people did, it's a style. People got it, but people got into it, but I was never that into it. But it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. That isn't my real point here. My point is that a good Let's Player and PewDiePie and Markiplier are good in the sense of like they created a style, a brand, they know exactly what they're doing. And I have liked stuff Markiplier did. For example, I enjoyed his Cuphead run. Uh
Oh yeah.
but
That was a
like
masterpiece.
it
The
was very
crying,
good.
the weeping.
Yeah. Uh but when it comes to a good Let's Player, they will add something to the experience of watching the game, right? What they will add
Mm-hmm.
to the experience is their commentary, their reactions will be entertaining, right? They will either offer good commentary or their reactions will be entertaining and add something to your experience of watching it. Uh, one of those two things or both. So
Right.
Markiplier and PewDiePie do add something to the experience of watching a game. It's not just watching the same game. Now, when it comes to something like the Stanley Parable, I could see why you might want to watch, say, Markiplier's experience of the Stanley Parable, or Cry's or PewDiePie's, whatever, any one of these Let's Players, right? Watching their experience of the Stanley Parable. It's also why I recommend, like, Save Data Team doing the Ace Attorney games. The Ace Attorney games are linear story games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are you getting out of watching a Let's Play of it? Well, the only thing you could possibly get is if the people who are playing the game do an entertaining job of it. This is why Save Data is good because they have a voice actor who is professionally acting the roles and he is very, very good, right? Or you have
Mm-hmm.
Pixel Partners who are also not professional level but are entertaining when they do it and they're putting an effort to entertain people in the way that they go through the games, right?
Right.
Now, when it comes to something like the Stanley Parable, I guess I question, like, you could just watch something. There are silent Let's Plays. You linked me one, right? Which
Yeah.
is just so people can see you play through the game. I don't really see the difference between watching a silent Let's Play and actually playing the Stanley Parable. I am not actually doing anything in the Stanley Parable. My inputs are essentially just running the game. I could have an auto button that alternates left and right presses on my mouse, and it wouldn't really make any difference. My skill means nothing, right? What
Mm.
I'm actually inputting means nothing. My decisions ultimately, and I know that this is kind of the point of the Stanley Parable in a sense, it's the commentary it's trying to give you,
Mm-hmm.
right? But my decisions kind of mean nothing. Uh, because but I don't mean it really in the Stanley Parable sense of like, ho ho ho, you're in a video game, it's preset decisions, so do they really matter or not matter? No, I mean, if I want to get my money's worth out of the Stanley Parable, I am ultimately going to try and replay it over and over again until I get the outcome that I want. Right?
Right.
Like, I want to see everything the game offers. So, even my decisions really only matter very early on. And even then, it's honestly not going to be so much like I'm going to make the decisions that I would make. Well, what decisions am I going to make when I play the Stanley Parable? If I were actually in the situation, I would probably approach it incredibly differently than what they're saying. I would probably be investigating to try and figure out a way out immediately, right?
Mm.
However, if I'm playing the game version of the Stanley Parable, my first reaction is probably the first reaction of most players, which is I'm going to listen to the narrator the first playthrough, right? That is what
Mm-hmm.
most people do. And I do. That's what happens. I listen to the narrator, I play through the game. It's fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have listened to the narrator on the first playthrough of the game. What am I going to do the second time? Well, who really knows? To be honest with you, I don't know what's going to happen, so my decisions are not very useful. I'm just trying to get reactions out of the narrator. You know,
Right.
I'm going to go right because last time I went left and see if it gives me new dialogue. And
You're
sure,
you're
the new
playing against the Chinese room.
yeah, and sure, the new dialogue is funny, but I can get all of this out of a YouTube video. Like, I'm
Sure.
not doing anything. I don't really. So that's why when the Stanley Parable Deluxe came out, I considered getting it. But then I'm like, but what's the point? I could just watch a Let's Play and it would have the same experience, and it would be the exact same experience. This is my real problem with these walking simulators. People go like, oh, are they art? It's
No.
not a game. Like, you're not actually playing a game. Now, Slay the Princess, I will say, is not as meta as the Stanley Parable.
Good.
Here's the thing, like, there is a narrator, and there's like they have the voice of the hero, and then as your personality fractures, you hear different voices, and they're arguing with the narrator. But the thing is that if you play on, you realize that there is an in-game, and I mean entirely in-game explanation for all of this, right? Like, the narrator isn't a narrator from a video game. He is a character in universe who you have come to call the narrator. Uh,
Right.
you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, so all of these things, it's less meta than the Stanley Parable. It just sort of seems more meta at first. And I think ultimately the Stanley Parable is something of an experiment that can only work once. And even the Stanley Parable Deluxe can really only work by being a commentary on the Stanley Parable. Uh,
Right. Like eventually, like meta in the end just turns into navel gazing. That's why people who study meta tend to not be able to make good things.
right. And the Stanley Parable, to its credit, I think correctly realizes this, and which is why it pivots into comedy. Because much like nihilism, meta kind of is nihilism in a sense. It's lack of meaning,
Yes.
and that can only work with comedy and horror, right?
Describing meaning is not meaning itself.
hmm It can work if it's comedy or horror, and I do think I am like I don't mean to bury the Stanley Parable here. That's not my goal. I
Right.
think that the Stanley Parable is good as it is. I enjoy it. I just don't really see the point in buying it if I can watch a let's play of it. I will get everything out of it that I can from buying it in a Let's Play. And this is my problem with all visual novels. Properly speaking, they're not games, right?
Right.
Like, I think that's my issue with them. It's why, like, the greatest visual novel ever made, considered by many people, is Steins Gate, right?
Sure.
That seems to be the consensus. If you were to do a poll and ask people what's the greatest visual novel ever made, people would say Steins Gate, probably,
That
right?
or Fate
I
Stay
think that's
Night. Sure.
yeah, right. But we'll use Steins Gate as an example. At the very least, it's very near the top.
Yes.
The thing about Steins Gate, though, is that I own it, and I started playing it. I'm getting kind of bored with it. There is a bit of a game to Steins Gate. Like, there is a bit of figuring out what to do, and I think you need that for it to be really great. Ace Attorney is sometimes considered a visual novel, and I love those games. The thing about the Ace Attorney games, though, is that they are games. Like, there is gameplay that you need to do to win Ace Attorney. Can you figure out Ace Attorney just by save scumming and randomly guessing every time you get stuck? Sure, you could, but you would ruin the experience for yourself. And if you had to do it constantly, that wouldn't be a very fun experience, right? Uh, you're probably going to do it at some point in every game just because of the nature of how those games work, unless you're particularly good at them. But if you had to do it constantly, then that would be that would be a sign of a badly made game. But the Ace Attorney games have gameplay. They are puzzle games. They're mystery games. You are looking at clues and trying to figure out how to solve a mystery. You're just doing it in a trial format. So I think that they are worth playing on their own before watching someone play, because you want to be able to try and figure out the mystery yourself. You
Right.
want to solve the problems yourself, much like a puzzle game. Steins Gate, I'm not so sure. There is a bit of a puzzle aspect to Steins Gate, but having played it, to be frank, the puzzles in Steins Gate and figuring out how to get the perfect ending gets so esoteric that it's basically unfair.
Right.
Like, and I'm not even saying this necessarily as a criticism. I think this is by design. You're not really supposed to figure out, quote unquote, the good ending of Steins Gate, right?
Right.
It's supposed to be something that you do after experiencing everything else in the game, which you will do by brute force, which they want you to do because they want you to experience the entire game. Then and only then, after that, can you finally figure out the true ending of Steins Gate. Uh, Steins Gate, in a sense, was a perfect type of story to be adapted into an anime, and it was. It was adapted into a critically acclaimed anime that's very, very good.
Yes.
I enjoy the Steins Gate anime. It's not my favorite, but it is great, and I think mostly deserves its reputation.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
this is all to
yeah.
say, yeah, this is all to say that Slay the Princess, in terms of is it worth playing, I'm not really sure if it's worth the price of buying the game to play through it instead of just watching a Let's Play of it. I guess there is that aspect of when you get to the final choice, right, of various endings of the game. Because Slay the Princess is a game where you are given a task. You're told you need to slay the princess. She's locked in a cabin. That's your job. And you have various options, and the game changes depending on the options you pick, right?
Hmm.
Like, you can just leave, and then eventually reality breaks, and it is a horror game, and the horror is very good. I do think that there's some really creepy imagery, some really good horror elements, right? The voice acting is quite good. Uh, but ultimately, it's about, are you going to actually slay the princess and then the world resets? Are you going to do it again? Are you going to try and help the princess? What even is the princess? You try and figure all of these things out, and there are various endings. But ultimately, in these sorts of games, while yes, there is a choice element to what would you do originally, you're going to make the opposite choice eventually, right?
Yes.
Like, you're going to, because you want to see what happens.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know,
I
like,
mean, it's there is a certain element to that, and there's also like a desire to do it yourself if you're that kind of person. But to me, it's very much like, where's the gameplay? Where's the beef? Where's the gameplay? Um, I want my gameplay, please. I don't need Doom 2016 or Doom Eternal or whatever gameplay, but I do expect at least a little something something. Um, because it's like the part of the reason why I never went back to like Katawa Shoujo, it wasn't because the characters weren't good, the writing wasn't good or whatever. It was just because it's like, it's not good, and like the writing isn't good enough to compel me. The pressing a button every hour or so isn't really something I enjoy doing because I have to focus on it in ways that I don't have to do with like a movie or something.
Yeah, I get your point. It's just it always strikes me as somewhat dishonest with exceptions because I feel like I paid for a game and I'm not playing a game. You know.
Mm,
Uh there are exceptions. Things like I hope we can spoil Doki Doki Literature Club at this
yeah,
point,
we
right?
can
It's
we can
it's past
spoil it.
yeah, it's past the
In
statute
fact, I
effects of
demand you spoil it.
yes. It's past the statute of limitations at this point. Like Doki Doki Literature Club and the ending of Doki Doki Literature Club. Like, famously, Doki Doki Literature Club is one of the most creative visual novels ever made. It's a horror visual novel that pretends to be a dating sim and then turns out to actually be a horror story about like the narrator of the novel wants you, and in order to end the game you need to go into the programming and delete pieces of it, but this doesn't actually end the game. It causes Monica, who is like the AI in control, to come alive and claim that you'll always be hers. Extremely clever, extremely smart, uh great ideas. I love it. Right?
Yeah,
10 of 10. Am a fan. So, all of this is to say that I think this is something that deserves to exist in the medium. It does because it couldn't exist otherwise, right? Doki Doki Literature Club would not have the impact that it did if it was not disguised as a dating sim, right? Like,
yes,
it couldn't work in another medium. This is one of the reasons I'm wary of sequels to it, because frankly, it seems like an idea that can only ever work once.
yes. The reason why it was interesting to look at, to talk about, to do whatever is because the the trick surprised people and it got viral in all the right ways that translated to real sales. Um, like writing a sequel, even though they wouldn't necessarily have to like do a surprise the same way they did, they'd still have to have a very compelling reason as to why we should play this particular game. And quite frankly, most sequels just don't have a compelling reason to exist.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
I would agree with you.
like I'm playing Risk of Rain Returns right now. It's a remake of the original pop roguelike Risk of Rain. The sequel became 3D and had some very interesting um, layout, character design, fighting, and stuff like that. It was genuinely interesting to play for its own sake and by itself without um, referencing the original. If you had bought Risk of Rain and thought it was, the first, uh, Risk of Rain 2, excuse me, and thought it was the first, uh, like there wasn't any like signs that it was a sequel, like you wouldn't be able to tell at all. Except for some like plot references, which quite frankly, nobody reads the plot all that much. Like it only in places where real nerds would care. And guess what? A real nerd would already know about this game, wouldn't you? If you were a real nerd. Are you a real nerd, Anthony?
Little bit.
Good,
Uh,
good.
no, like It's something that I muse on a lot of, like, what is acceptable for to be charged and tell people this is a video game, right? Like,
Right.
I've never really been super sure about visual novels in this regard. And it's not so much that I think they're all bad, because I don't.
Right.
Uh, the Ace Attorney games are sometimes classed as visual novels. I think that's misleading because, frankly, you don't just read them; they have actual gameplay.
Right.
Uh, Now the gameplay does involve reading. It's very simple gameplay. It's gameplay that involves like the mechanics of what you would normally use in a visual novel. But nevertheless, you can lose an Ace Attorney game. I
Hmm.
think that's the distinction. I think that's the distinction I would give. There is a lose condition on an Ace Attorney game. There's even a famous one, which, by the way, I did trigger the first time I played it. But there's even a famous one where, like, most of the lose conditions are you get enough things wrong in the trials, and it just goes, it fades. It says you lose the trial, game over, and then you need to restart from your last save. But there is a very famous one in the last case of the second game, which is arguably the most famous case in the entire franchise, where if you get it wrong, then they have a little cutscene where Phoenix is like, "I wandered the streets. Maya died, and there were no more miracles. The end." And it's kind of intense, and then it's just like, and now you got to start from the last save point. I hope you saved right before the last choice.
Is that the one with the clown? The clown
No,
girl?
no, no, not the one with the clown girl.
Oh.
Clown girl. I don't know clown girl. There is a clown. There is one with a clown. It's a famously bad case.
It's bad. Then why are there so many memes about the clown girl?
I'm googling clown girl a. Okay, it comes up if I Google clown girl Ace Attorney. Oh, she's from Spirit of Justice. Okay. I haven't played that game yet. There you go. So I can't tell you if this character is bad or not. Uh However, the information that Google gives me is absolutely hilarious. Ace Attorney Clown Girl is Geiru Tanido, a 34-year-old balloon artist and villainess from Spirit of Justice. She became viral on Twitter in June 2022 after a fan animation of her snapping her suspenders was posted, sparking horny posting and fan art. This is what Bing tells me. Some fans are divided on whether she is hot or not. Wow. Unbelievable.
I'm privating the stream after, Anthony.
I haven't played that game yet, so I have not been introduced to that character. Amazing. Uh, Looking forward to the game though.
Oh my goodness.
I still gotta finish Dual Destinies, and then
Yeah.
there's Ace Attorney Investigations 1, and Ace Attorney Investigations 2, and Phoenix Wright versus Professor Layton, and then Spirit of Justice.
Why would you delay the clown girl?
Why indeed? We may never know. Okay. Right. So, anyway, back to visual novels. Ace Attorney, good ones. Mostly good ones, but they have gameplay. Yeah, the ending of the second Ace Attorney game is kind of wild. The whole case is kind of wild. Like, one of the main so Ace Attorney is known for, you have your detective and he has a teenage girl assistant. They never really explain this. Somehow the detectives in every game manage to get a teenage girl as their assistant,
Don't
and
you
that's
know
just
she's a
the way.
prodigy who's never lost a single case?
Yes. The best version of that joke in any Ace Attorney game is when they meet the mysterious prosecutor Godot, who everybody talks about in hushed voices as like, "Oh, you're facing Godot," and they reveal that he's this legend who has never lost a case. Which obviously, wait, and Phoenix is like, "Then how haven't I heard of this guy?" And then Godot reveals that he has never lost or won a case because this is his first case. Uh, it's the best it is my favorite version of this of Ace Attorney acknowledging and twisting this meme.
Yeah, I mean that's a clever way to do it because it's like it seems like anytime I'm reading like a summary, it's like hey, Phoenix, faces off against the Ace Attorney of who knows a Stan, and never lost a case, and it's like it's the prosecutor. Like that
Yeah,
would be worrisome in any civilized society that the prosecutor has a 100% conviction rate.
pretty normal in Japan.
Eh,
Uh,
yeah, but it takes a lot more to get conviction. To get into whatever.
yeah, not to get into it, but
Yeah,
whatever, doesn't matter. The point. So here's the thing about Ace Attorney. I will. They're a little bit better with that than people will sometimes give them credit for, because you have like the first game, Edgeworth, who is the our first iteration of the genius prosecutor who never lost a case. But by the end of the game, he is on trial for murder, and you need to defend him, and then he like redeems himself.
yeah,
He is not the villain of the second game or the main prosecutor. The prosecutors
right.
aren't always the villains. Uh, he's not the main prosecutor of the second game. I will say that the second game, although I do think that the character is entertaining, this is definitely the most absurd iteration of this trope, which is when you meet Franziska von Karma, the 16-year-old prodigy, who has never lost a case because she started prosecuting at 13 in Germany, which is how she started, and now she's come to Japan to take on Phoenix Wright in vengeance for him taking putting her father in prison. Uh, this is probably the
Amazing.
most yeah, this is probably the most absurd version of this trope. With that said, the character is pretty entertaining. She carries around a whip and actually whips people like in the middle of the trial, including the judge at one point. Uh, and everybody just accepts this. And then in the third game, you get Godot, where they just play it off as a joke, where it's like, the mysterious legendary prosecutor, and Phoenix is freaking out, and then you learn that the reason he never lost the case is that this is his first case as a prosecutor. Uh, so that was kind of clever.
Right.
Uh,
No,
and
it's clever. Like, don't get me wrong. It's absolutely funny. Like, it's genuinely. I just enjoy it so much. You have to understand.
yes. Now, then, though, it gets pretty silly when you get to the fourth game, and the prosecutor is Prosecutor Blackwell. And for some reason, he carries a samurai sword and has a pet bird, but speaks in a British accent, and also is a convicted murderer, but is also the prosecutor.
Amazing.
Like, none of these elements really work together at all. It's just this random hodgepodge of, hey, how can we make him more intimidating? And they just kept adding things. British accent, samurai sword. Also, he friggin' killed someone.
A judge who
But
didn't give him the conviction.
oh no, he was convicted. He is an actual convicted murderer. He just prosecutes anyway. He just comes to trial with his hands in shackles and does the trial.
It's like, oh, so is he like doing a work release program? No, he passed the bar. It's just that the law allows a lawyer to uh pursue the law in whatever state he happens to be in.
Japanifornia.
Right, Japanifornia, with the where you have extra rice on those burgers.
Yeah. I do enjoy Black Quill, but I will admit that the criticism that there is way too much going on with Black Quill as a character is probably correct.
Yeah,
Uh, it's just like you. the thought process behind him is so obvious. It's like we got to make this guy really intimidating, like really, really intimidating. Then they go like, let's give him a British accent. That's intimidating, right? They go, yeah. And let's give him a samurai sword. That's
Yeah.
intimidating. Go, yeah. And how about if he killed a guy? And then someone's just like, wait, what? I thought he's a prosecutor. It's like, oh yeah, just put him in jail. Who cares? He killed the guy and he's the prosecutor. Why not? And then they're just like, yeah, and he killed someone. And then they go like, now, I bet you're afraid of him now, right, player?
No.
No,
No,
not at
no,
all.
no, not really.
Uh, in the Great Ace Attorney games, the prosecutor is named Von Zeeks, and he is known as the Reaper of the Bailey because uh, he almost never loses, but they have a jury system in Britain. So he does lose sometimes because they say that, like, oh, well, sometimes the jury gets it wrong. So even though he's flawless, the jury can be full of morons, right? And however, everybody who gets off against him is then murdered in sometimes brutal fashion immediately afterward. So he now has the reputation as the Reaper of the Bailey, and he's possibly a serial killer.
Of course.
Now,
I mean, of course, of course.
spoiler alert, he's obviously not because they set that plot point up way too early. So you
Right.
need a twist, so he can't be the serial killer. But nevertheless, this is like a thing. And he openly says that he uses this. He enjoys this because it makes people intimidated of him. So he's like, yeah, I might be a serial killer. What you gonna do about it?
What you gonna do? There's no evidence, huh? Huh? No evidence. Ooh.
Exactly. It's a it's a great game. I recommend it. The
No,
Great
it's
Ace Attorney Chronicles.
no, it sounds
Uh,
great. Like these things are so silly as to be ridiculous in all the best ways. Uh,
oh yeah, they're very very silly. Uh, I am an unironic. I'm probably going to play Ace Attorney now after the stream is over because now you've reminded me that I'm in the middle of Dual Destinies. Uh, I unironically enjoy these games very much. They're incredibly silly, but there is like a core to them where it's like, yo, the writing is better than you think,
right.
which was kind of my that was my reaction to playing the first game is that I thought the first like 3 cases in the game were kind of okay. And then the fourth case, which is the one where the prosecutor ends up on trial for murder, I'm like, yo, this is actually a legitimately good mystery that I am genuinely invested in. It's like I want to see where this goes and how they work it out. And also, it has legitimately one of the funniest moments in the entire series. Phoenix is completely desperate and has no idea what to do, so they put a parrot on the stand and interrogate the parrot.
Right.
It's a very famous moment in the Ace Attorney series, and I knew nothing about Ace Attorney when I first played it, so I didn't know any of the memes or anything. So when they put the parrot on the stand, I'm pretty sure I was like doubled over laughing for like 5 minutes.
I mean, it's funny.
It's very funny. And the also the interrogation is hysterical because the interrogation is exactly what you think. He just like he asks the parrot a question, the parrot just answers with like Polly want a cracker. And then they're like, are you sure this is a good idea? He's like, shut up, Maya. It's gonna work.
Are
And then at
you the
one point,
lawyer?
yeah, exactly. And then and then you figure out like at one point you know that the parrot does happen to have memorized like the code to a safe or something. So you give the parrot the cue to say the code, but the parrot doesn't say it. And then Phoenix stops for a moment and thinks, wait a minute, did Von Karma, who's the villain, and he's like, did Von Karma retrain the parrot? Which just has this incredibly funny image of the villain realizing that you might one day put the parrot on the stand, going in and retraining the parrot so it doesn't respond to the cue anymore. Uh, The whole thing is insane. And then it ends with this legitimately incredible moment of, for some reason, the entire case, uh, you have a metal detector in your evidence the entire time, and you need to use it on the prosecutor to find a bullet buried in his shoulder as proof of where a missing bullet went several decades ago. Incredible ending, incredible case, 10 out of 10. Great combination of being extremely silly, but also I was absolutely invested in everything that was going to happen.
Right. No, like
Uh,
that sounds absolutely amazing. Like you guys, like it's one of those things where I'll never actually play it myself, but it's like, yeah, I love hearing this. I love hearing these stories directly.
yeah, they're also funnier to tell because then when you tell the story, you pause for a moment and you realize, oh wait, this is actually completely insane. Uh, like truly, this is nuts.
Right.
Sort of like the Alex Rider series, actually, where like the the reason the Alex Rider series works because Anthony Horowitz is very technical, so he manages to describe everything Alex does in such good technical detail that he makes it sound plausible until you summarize the book afterward and you realize that everything that he did, when added up individually, is completely nuts.
Right.
Ace Attorney is kind of like that. In the moment, they're pretty good at making you buy everything that's going on. Not perfect, some things don't really work, but pretty good. But then you describe the plot after and you go, wow, the story is actually completely insane. I love it. Uh, yeah, the one that ends with like Phoenix wanders the streets, a broken man, Maya dies, and the villain gets away is a pretty wild one. Uh, it's just like, yeah, Maya, you know, like Maya freaking died, and the villain got away, and I was a broken man and just wandered the streets forever. And there's no such thing as miracles. The end. And then the game just ends. It's great. I love it.
No, it sounds great.
The entire, I mean, the entire case is insane. You're defending a man who hired an assassin to kill someone. Who, by the way, the assassin has the worst pun name in the series because his name is just the Killer, like DE and Killer. Like it's not even a pun.
Right.
Not good. Not a fan.
Just in case they
Anyway,
want to remind you that innocent is completely not guilty, innocent even.
right. So you are forced to defend an actor who hired an assassin to kill another actor because that assassin kidnaps your teenage girl assistant Maya, uh, and is going to murder her if you don't get a not guilty verdict.
Of course.
It is a completely insane story. And like the climax of the story involves like the prosecutor Edgeworth putting together a special task force as hunting down the killer while you're stalling for time, and then eventually you have to put the killer on the stand, but he won't actually show up, so you just put a radio on the stand where the killer speaks to the judge, and everybody's like, and the judge is just like, I'll allow it. Uh, it's a great case. It's probably the most famous case in the series,
Right,
but
right.
it's completely insane. Uh,
See, that's the thing though. It does like that's more than just like some sort of weird, depressing, funny high school sociopath simulator. It's like it's got a lot of heart to it. It's got characters. It's got interesting things happening, and quite frankly, it sounds like you can actually root for these people. Because some of them
No,
like
you're absolutely right. The thing about the Ace Attorney franchise is that, like, I want to be clear here that as I describe this, like, I am genuinely invested in the ending of this case. Like,
right,
I actually want to win. Like there are several. Ace Attorney is known for this. Like it has several really heartwarming moments. Like you get the moment where they rescue Maya and she shows up and her and Phoenix are hugging each other and you're like, "Aw," like I'm into it. I like it. I like these characters. I don't want them to die. Not like the sociopath simulator.
Right, right. Where them dying is part of the appeal, quite frankly. Uh,
That's what makes Ace Attorney like. Honestly, that's what surprised me about it. Where it was like, I expected it to be very silly. I did not expect to actually be invested in the story. Like I figured I would just be kind of skating along, but then like by the end of the game, I'm like, you know what? Like I actually like the characters. Like they have done enough to make me think that I want these characters to succeed. There's also a weird thing. Like I know that I mentioned how you get your teenage girl assistant. It turned into a meme in the series, and it became more and more arbitrary as the games went on. But I actually think they do a really, really good job of setting it up in the first game specifically, like why they would have this specific relationship. Like
mm,
the game opens up with Phoenix's partner slash boss, like she owns the firm that he's working for and is kind of his mentor, is a woman named Mia who gets murdered in the first case. Her sister is a girl named Maya, who is the 16-year-old girl. So
right.
first, she's accused of Mia's murder. So first, you go to defend her in the trial, and you win the trial. And then at the end of the trial, Maya is like, we're a team. We've helped each other. I'm going to help you at your law firm. And Phoenix is like, that seems completely ridiculous. But also, you get a note from Maya where she says something, or from Mia, where she says something to Maya, like, take care of Phoenix. He's going to need help if I'm gone. And there you just generally get the sense that Phoenix is a nice enough guy that you realize that Maya at this point is literally entirely alone in the world. Like her parents are dead, her sister is now dead. She has nobody else but Phoenix who is looking out for her. So it's not as if Phoenix isn't going to, is going to kick her out. Like he's just not going to do that. He's not that sort of guy. Like he realizes, hey, this girl is actually like in a really, dark place right now. You know, uh, and then they bond over the course of two cases where Maya helps you find clues and solve the cases. That by the end of the game, they have an actual relationship with each other, where Maya has actually helped you solve the case and she's actually helped you do things. And she even has a little bit of an arc where she feels guilty over being useless because she's not a lawyer and Phoenix is, and she's helping at a law firm. But then she puts herself on the line to help you out, and she leaves at the end of the game to go off and train. And there's a big emotional scene at a train station where he says goodbye to her. Like they do a really good job of making this relationship work because it's not, which you have to do, because otherwise it's not a normal relationship. You don't want to wonder, why is Nick, which is his nickname, Phoenix's nickname, why is he being so creepy, right? Like you don't want to wonder that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't want to wonder that, at least. I'm sure that there are some Japanese people who would. But I think that Ace Attorney really does a good job of, in the first game specifically, of with Phoenix and Maya's relationship, putting a lot of work in of having them build a relationship and saying like, no, there are very specific reasons that Maya and Phoenix specifically are hanging out with each other. Where it gets to be a problem in the series is not with that game where they do such a good job with it. It's actually in later games. Like in the next game in the series, after the Phoenix trilogy is over, they have the Apollo Justice game, and the 16-year-old girl is a girl named Trucy. Now, uh, Trucy is the adopted daughter of Phoenix, but Apollo doesn't know her at all, and she just kind of attaches herself to Apollo at one point. Uh, and was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna help you." And it's like, "Why? Who are you?" Yeah, and it's not like Trucy is a bad character, as far as quirky girls who are in the game go. She's fine. And they don't do anything weird with Apollo. Don't get me wrong. Like
Right.
Apollo treats her fine,
This is all
but
family friendly, unlike most YouTubers DMs.
yes, uh, it's all family friendly. But there is a weirdness to like, okay, but it's not so much I have a problem with Trucy or I have a problem with Apollo so much as what is Trucy doing here?
Mm.
Like, I don't really know what to like. Why are you letting her follow you around, and why does she want to follow you around? Like, you have not put in the work to make this relationship make sense. Like
Yeah.
with Maya, you absolutely put in the work. You know, Mia was her sister. Maya feels somewhat responsible to Phoenix. Also, Maya is alone in the world and there's nobody else who cares about her. Phoenix is not just going to kick her out because Phoenix isn't a bad guy and he realizes that Maya is literally alone. Uh, and then they actually form a relationship after working on cases together. Like, it all makes sense, you know. But with Apollo and Trucy, it just kind of doesn't. And then eventually you learn that they're related to each other. That's like, oh, Trucy is actually Apollo's long lost sister in a twist that makes absolutely no sense. Uh, it,
Very
it
Luke
doesn't make any
Skywalker
sense.
kind of thing.
A little bit, like they are biologically siblings. It's just like extremely contrived how they get there.
Right.
Like extremely. Uh, and they don't, and also there's this weird thing where they don't tell Apollo this,
Yep.
where it's like, oh, Trucy's his sister, but let's not tell him. Like, why won't you tell him?
It's mysterious.
Yes. And then the game just ends with this revelation. It's like, okay, but I feel like Apollo should really know this. So like, don't you want to like head off in advance, like if when Trucy turns out 18, not for
Right.
nothing. Uh
Right.
you don't want to follow hitting on Trucy. Uh and it's like,
Right.
oh, that's gross. It's like, yeah, but he doesn't know. Like,
Yeah.
tell him, head this off.
Right.
Uh
There's a certain amount of like I'm not one of those guys who like how do I want to put it? Like some people say explicitly that men and women can't be friends. I'm like, but at the same time, it's like you have two unmarried young people together all the time, like, and they're not siblings, quote unquote, or at least one of them thinks they're not siblings. One of them is completely unaware that the beautiful girl who always works with him and seems super into him is in fact not not
yes.
blood related. It's like he's going to ask her out. Like, hey, we worked together for, 15, 5 years, 10 years or whatever. We should get drinks together. No. No.
Look, guys and girls can be friends.
Right.
The problem with it is that if you're going to do that, you need to establish like boundaries in that relationship very quickly. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Uh, and the boundaries need to be clear, and
Yep.
people need to know it. Like there are the most famous male female friendship that I know of in history is Saint Francis of Assisi and Saint Clare. And that's a really good example of why that relationship worked. Both of them were celibates, communicated largely through letters, though Francis, don't get me wrong, they met each other, they knew each other in person, but a lot of their relationship was through letters. And when Francis met in person, like one of the things that he did was help her escape her parents so she could join the nunnery. You know, like this is a really good example of, yeah, I think that was probably a very real and wholesome friendship because both sides knew had very clear boundaries with each other.
Yes.
You know, this was never ever at any point going to be anything but a friendship, nor could it be.
Mm.
The problem with male female friendships in real life is that those boundaries are just not laid out explicitly.
Yep.
So it leads to either a friction where you can't get as close as you normally would because you're worried about it being construed in the wrong way, or if you're a guy, frankly, you're worried about rejection. Uh,
Mm.
right.
Yep.
Or alternatively, it's just awkward. Yeah.
Yep. And it's like people want to turn it into some sort of like movie thing or any number of other things, but quite frankly, nobody knows how any relationship's going to turn out. I can barely figure out the relationships at the bar I bounce at for the last 2 and something years, 3 years at this point. It's like, if the guy who stands at the door and watches people go in and out all the time can't figure out some of these people's relationships, how are you going to do it, uh, you know, in uh, in a relationship with somebody like that? Like it's never going to end well for either party.
Yeah, it's it's just something that you got to establish if you want to be have close male female friendships. Like those sorts of boundaries need to be established in advance. Going into like just in the fictional world of the game of Phoenix and Maya, right in the game. I think that's a good example of a male female friendship that never in the game evolves into a romantic relationship, but like the fact that they got as close as they did once again pretty much makes sense.
Yes. There's a underlying logic to it that is not closed up to future developments, while at the same time having a perfectly reasonable explanation that satisfies everybody, except for the
So the
perverts
thing
on
about the
Tumblr.
Phoenix Wright games is that uh Phoenix and so the prosecutor of the first game, Edgeworth, you've probably heard this if you're familiar with the memes at all because it's so
Of course,
common,
I
but
know the memes.
they're so commonly shipped with each other, Phoenix and Edgeworth.
Duh.
Uh Yeah, like the gay shipping. I have even seen people make the claim that the games like had their origins in like the gay community. The thing is that like from gay magazines or something like in those sorts of relationships. I don't know nothing about that. But the thing is that in the games Phoenix is actually explicitly straight. I understand that people are going to try and point to bisexual, but bisexuals don't exist. I will die on that hill. Uh
They're just more complicated perverts.
yes. You touch a penis, you're now gay. We all know it. Until you renounce it in the name of Jesus Christ. Uh,
You hear that, women? If you touch your husband, you're gay.
women, yeah. I'm now actually tickled by the idea that this now applies to women too. It's like, that's right, women. You too. You touch a penis, you're gay.
You
I'm gonna
can't
keep going as
win.
if I didn't. I'm gonna keep going as if I said nothing unusual. Anyway,
You didn't.
uh,
This is completely normal.
it's completely normal. It's a good thing we have like nobody listening to the stream, but
Buddy,
uh,
we have 5 people. That's like upper range. We're done.
it is.
Uh,
I'm very tickled by this idea. It amuses me. No, yeah. When you talk about, I'm gonna keep going though, because I actually had a real point I was making. So, the thing is that in the games, like Edgeworth, the whole Edgeworth Phoenix relationship and things like that. By the time you reach the third game in the trilogy, Phoenix is explicitly given a female love interest. It's like a main plot point, no less.
right.
Like
Because
this
they
is a
fall in
huge.
love when he has to defend her against a prosecutor
Actually, no.
who's
It's
never
way more
lost a
dramatic
single
and
case.
it's way more dramatic and convoluted than that, actually.
I don't
Uh,
believe it, but okay.
so the last case of the final game is, like I've talked about, it's so convoluted, Ben. It's so convoluted. It is so convoluted. It spans like three different eras with three different trials, and culminates over like there's ghost possessions are a huge part of the case. Uh, It is so
Pagans.
convoluted. Identical twins make an appearance. Uh,
Identical twin ghosts?
yes, actually, kind
Oh
of.
my goodness.
Well, one of the twins is a ghost. One is still alive. Uh, but also when the ghost possesses people, it changes your appearance to match them, except for your hair color. For some reason, your hair color stays the same, but the rest of your appearance changes. And no, they never explain. It's always female mediums that can do this, and they always possess in game. We always see them possess other women. We never get an explanation of what would happen if they possess men. You're just kind of like, don't think about it. Uh, like it does. Don't get me wrong. It's explicit in the game that they can and do possess men. Like they can channel male spirits, and they will look like the man they're channeling. But like, wait, what does that mean? Like, you're just kind of called like, don't think about it. Uh, yeah. We never actually see them do this, presumably because it would be way too weird. Uh, anyway,
Yes.
like the case involves like Phoenix has a love interest, and then the love interest tries to murder him with poison, but then it turns she's convicted of murder, and then she's executed, and then she, as a ghost, she gets channeled and tries to kill Maya, and then she kills Maya's mother. It is very convoluted. Uh, but the twist at the end of the game, which is actually like probably my favorite twist of this case, which had like 5 major twists, by the way. Uh, this was the finale of the original trilogy, so they went big on it. Uh, the twist at the end of the game is that Phoenix, like, he is talking to the twin girl who is still alive, and she reveals to him that at the beginning of their relationship, it was actually her who was talking to Phoenix. And their original goal of the femme fatale, who is the actual killer, was that she seduce Phoenix and make him like give and have him give up some sort of MacGuffin to her. Only she actually fell in love with him. So the evil twin swapped out with her and then tried to kill Phoenix. Uh, and I actually thought this was a very touching twist at the end of the game.
It
Uh,
is.
he was like, because Phoenix, the whole time, Phoenix was like, no, I actually think you were in love with me. And then she reveals at the end of it that she really was in love with him. And then it's like, aw, that's nice. And then there are like 5 more games in the series, and she's never mentioned again.
Oh.
Uh, But the point is, like, I want to be clear here. There's a major plot point in the game that that Phoenix has a female love interest who is in love with him. Right? Like, this is a huge part of the game.
Right.
So they have like the gay shipping with him and Edgeworth that fans like to put in, but the game goes out of its way to debunk it, and then people just go into denial and go, "No, I really think they're pushing it." It's like, no, like it's possible that when the games were coming out, they were intentionally baiting people into trying to think of how to put it, into shipping the two of them who liked it, but then they intentionally went out of their way to squash it. Like, they didn't want people doing it anymore.
Right.
Kind of interesting. Any other games that you have played lately, Ben, that you think are worth talking about?
Sure. Pull up my Steam account.
I played Melody's Escape 2. So Melody's Escape is a rhythm game. I really enjoyed it. It came out a while ago, years and years ago now.
Yep.
The cool thing about this game is that, like a lot of audio surf and stuff like that, you upload your own soundtrack and it generates the path, and you need to hit buttons at the beat, whatever. Well, the creator decided to make a sequel to it, and I got it the day it came out in open access, where it was very flawed because the beats and your inputs didn't match up exactly. But he's tinkered with it and tinkered with it and tinkered with it. And the current version, Melody's Escape 2, I can honestly say is now the superior version of the game. Like, if you're planning on getting it, don't get 1, just get 2. 2 is better. Uh, like, it is really good. They have really cool backgrounds. He just added, like, new backgrounds. They added flying into the game, which is the one thing that he couldn't do. He changed the view, was originally a side scroller. Now it's 3D, and you follow Melody as she runs through the song from behind. And this is actually better because in the original version it could give you a headache. He has prevented that from happening. There was actually a really big thing where the creator of the game was talking about how, like, the sacrifice is that the sacrifice of the game was that you couldn't have flying if you were going to do it from behind. A bunch of fans complained. And then, credit to the creator, he actually managed to make flying work. So now Melody flies. Very cool, very fun game. There is literally nothing to it except that you play songs and hit buttons to the rhythm. But good, relaxing party game. Yeah. If you get to play it with a bunch of friends, each of you pick a different song, it could be a lot of fun.
I'm enjoying Risk of Rain. Uh, quite frankly, it's always been one of my favorite games, just because like eventually you just turn into this absolute uh, massacre man, and can just wipe out entire levels worth of people with
Yeah,
absolutely overpowered abilities. And
I
I
dig it.
mean this in all the best ways. Like it gets pretty ridiculous. Like my upgrades are basically meaningless because I have the artifact that lets me choose my upgrades. So I just chose all the damaged upgrades in certain ways. So every time I hit, I release 4 to 7. Um, I've left my laundry where I don't know where it is. 4 to 7 uh, like missiles that do 300 plus damage, and my damage is increased the more health they have. So what happens is that uh, like it basically just melts them. Like I am melting boss monsters. There's almost more boss monsters than there is normal monsters, uh, and it's just fantastic. I enjoy it. I enjoy it very much. And I'm not even that far into this run of the game because, excuse me, because they released a sequel called Risk of Rain 2, which I mentioned earlier, but now they've
Yep.
done a remix of the first one called Risk of Rain Returns, which is
Oh,
really
hey,
just, hmm,
I own Risk of Rain.
yeah,
Go figure.
it's good.
Keep
I
going.
have several hundred hours in it. Uh, and what I like about it is that it's portrayed as, yeah, there's something kind of messed up about what you're doing, wiping out whole ecosystems multiple times if you're doing what I'm doing, and just kind of running through the same level multiple times. But I don't care. Uh, if they, you know, let's be real. If their civilization had been meant to exist, why did they, crash my spaceship in the first place? All right, they should have known better. Uh, but
Yeah,
they didn't. But it's like you run through it, you get all these upgrades, you wipe out whole ecosystems, like I said. And right now I'm at the point where I am doing you know millions of damage to all kinds of people, uh, monsters and bosses and stuff like that. And
is it a
eventually,
roguelike?
yeah,
Okay. I was just curious.
it's just one of those things where it's like there's no plot to it except that some alien jerk knocked your spaceship down. And guess what? Now everyone has to die. Um, that gets in your way. And it's just I don't know. It's just good. It's just balanced all the right way. Everything was responsive the right way. The upgrades are incredibly satisfying. Uh, you can do all kinds of different things with your characters. There's not a lot of configuration of the characters just because of how complex the game itself is. But it's pretty nice. Like it's one of those things that just builds on itself to be pretty good. The best of its kind. Like it's kind of like how Hotline Miami is the best of like top-down shooters. Um, nobody really does it better than the original Hotline Miami, not even the sequel, even though the sequel's plot is a lot better than people say. Uh, but it's still, it's its own flavor, and it's a flavor in all the best ways, which is, quite frankly, more important than, I don't know, like a lot of what games do these days.
You
Uh,
ever play Dead Cells?
nope. Something about it just never appealed to me, and I could not tell you
So
why.
I was not. Almost didn't get it until they added their Castlevania update. And then I'm like, okay, like I'm not even a Castlevania guy, but there's a history there, and that is actually really cool that they got the rights to do that. So
Oh,
I
that's
do
pretty
like
cool.
Dead Cells. I don't have a ton of time in it or anything. Don't get me wrong. I've only just started it.
Right.
I'm 84 minutes in, which in a game like this, if any of you have ever, it's a roguelite. If any of you have ever played roguelites, you know that you need to get hours and hours and hours into the game before you start getting good and making progress. Uh,
Yep.
so I I have mixed feelings on roguelites. There are some that I absolutely love. Hades, I think, is a masterpiece and one of the best games ever made. I like it more than Ben does, I am aware. But I think
I
I'll
got
die on
tired
that
of
hill.
it. I just got tired of it.
I get you. I'll die on that hill, though. I love
Yeah.
Hades. FTL is considered a roguelite, even though it is a completely different style of game. And it is one of my favorite games of all time. I have several thousand hours in it. I have beaten it on hard mode with the standard ship. Uh, which let me tell you, considering how bad I am at video games, is to tell you just how much time I have sunk into FTL. And that I still have not even come close to beating the game, by the way. So I do like some roguelites. Dead Cells I think is a good one. It's not one that's captured me enough to put a ton of hours into it yet, but I would definitely consider doing more with it. Uh the thing about Steam, so I have tons and tons and tons of games. Many of them I didn't play. The thing about Steam is that I don't know how you use it. The way that I use it is that I see a game that looks kind of interesting. I put it on my wish list, and I wait for it to go on sale for a reasonable price and pick it up. And then sometimes I will play it quickly, and sometimes I'll forget that I own it. This is why Steam prints Valve money, Frank. Uh,
Anthony,
we've
that's
had
how
this
everyone uses Steam.
yeah. Uh, we have had this conversation before. I have very mixed feelings on Steam as a whole because, on one hand, they are not converged. They are very much profit first, right? That's the
Right.
way that they operate. They are, in fact, like in the face of people protesting them, right? People have tried to take like Hogwarts Legacy off, whatever,
Right.
and Steam is like, nope, we let everything on. And they will literally let anything on, even things that are incredibly tasteless or downright immoral, like
Right.
porn games or whatever. But they're not converged, they're profit first. The flip side of this is that Steam is so big in the industry that they represent essentially like a single fall point where if and when Steam converges, and Steam will converge one day, it will happen. It
Yes.
might not happen for a decade. It might not happen till after Gabe Newell dies,
Yep.
in 30 years or something,
No,
right?
no, he's horribly obese, Anthony. He's got, you know
I
what?
have no idea. Yeah, I
I
really have
believe
no
he'll
idea.
survive it. I believe he's the one man to become the techno master.
Yeah, I really have no idea.
He'll be
But
Mr.
anyway,
House except for Steam.
when Gabe Newell dies, or Gabe Newell retires, or Gabe Newell sells the company, you know, Steam will converge.
Yes.
And the problem with Steam is that when it converges, like I am not kidding when I say it may crash the video game industry.
it
Uh like
deserves it.
it's such a point of convergence, right? Like it's so important to the indie scene, for example. So this is a known good year for games, right? Like everybody's talking about it. Like as far as video games go this year, uh this has been a pretty good year for video games. It gave us Tears of the Kingdom, which everybody seemed to like. It gave us the new Spider-Man, which a few people have tried to find issue with, but ultimately people seem to like, right? Uh,
Sure.
I've seen a few people try and find issues with it, but ultimately I think people seem to like it.
People seem to
Uh,
like it. That is a way to say it.
yeah, no, I'll die on that hill. Uh, I haven't played it, so I actually won't. Like maybe it's terrible, but uh, it's given us Baldur's Gate 3, which everybody loves. And not played personally, but my sister has played, and she tells me that it deserves all of the hype that it gets. Uh, so yeah, there you go. So good year for video games. The thing is, like, one of the reasons that the industry is actually doing kind of okay right now is because of the indie scene. The indie scene is very strong, and there's a lot of
Yep.
really strong titles on there, right? Mid-list games and things like that. Baldur's Gate 3 is a good example. It's a mid-list game, right? It is not from a big studio. It's from a mid-tier studio at best, you know. Uh, and that as a result, it was able to do things that weren't like, focus group mandated with the current era, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was able to innovate in real ways. And there's a lot of games like this where it's like, if you want things that innovate, Slay the Princess, which, by the way, won Best Indie Game at some of these video game awards. There aren't really any there's no one video game award, right? Like that's like the equivalent of the video game Oscars. There's just a bunch of video game awards.
Mm-hmm.
And people just tend to like look at who won the most at the end of the year as the winner of game of the year. Uh
Right.
so uh Slay the Princess won like a best indie RPG. It is not an RPG, by the way. It's really bizarre that it won an RPG award. I guess there weren't a lot of good RPGs this year.
I
Uh
can't really think of any.
yeah. Baldur's Gate 3, but it's not an indie game. It's mid tier, mid list, I guess is what you would call it, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're saying best indie RPG, it wouldn't win. Uh, yeah, there's a lot there's a lot of good stuff, and when Steam falls, like the industry may completely crash. There are there wow. There are alternatives to Steam, like GOG, Grand Old Games, and Epic and stuff like that, but Steam is where most things are filtered. And I have played some good games recently that I've downloaded. I really liked. There's a game called Shadow Tactics: Blades of the Shogun. That was a cool game. It's like a strategy game where you have different characters with with different abilities, and you have a goal to accomplish, and you have a certain amount of moves to do it. I don't know if you've ever played games like that. I guess it would just be called a strategy game, but not like Total War. Uh, I mean, there's another really, really great one in that genre called Invisible Ink, INC dot, which is a fantastic game that I highly recommend. Uh,
Mm.
you play as like a spy organization, and you have missions that you need to get through and a certain amount of moves. Fantastic little puzzle strategy game. Uh, and it's made by the same studio that made Mark of the Ninja, which is in my top 5 games ever. Mark of the Ninja is a masterpiece and highly underrated. Uh, if you haven't played it, I recommend it highly. Let's see. I'm looking through my recent games and things I played recently. I went back to Left 4 Dead 2 again recently. It's still amazing. It's a great game.
It is.
I know that I know that's easy, but you know what? They tried to copy it with Back for Blood, and Back for Blood was terrible. And it
Yeah.
was terrible for very subtle reasons. Like, I couldn't explain to you why, except to say it wasn't fun.
So I can explain it. I promise you I can give you a pretty good explanation for this. So
Go ahead.
there is a gun called the Scar that is in both games. This gun, it's a machine gun.
Oh,
Is
oh,
is
okay.
a high powered machine gun that pretty much guarantees a kill every time you shoot it. Maybe multiple if you get lucky. Uh, it doesn't do that in Back for Blood. It feels kind of bad, clunky. It was very accurate in Left 4 Dead 2, um, but in Back for Blood, it's only kind of accurate, uh, and so it doesn't feel as good to play as, quite frankly, it really should. It should feel like an absolutely amazing, awesome weapon that makes you feel like you're a real badass, but it doesn't. Instead, it feels like something you have to upgrade with different mechanics that, quite frankly, you don't feel, like that don't feel good enough to really master with some upgrade systems and characters that, quite frankly, aren't as compelling at all. Uh,
Yeah, not for nothing, but the original Left 4 Dead opening cutscene, I have often said this, and I think that I'm not saying anything unusual. I think most people would agree with me, but that is probably the single greatest game trailer ever made. It is a little mini movie that is first an actually very good zombie movie,
mm-hmm.
and second explains basically all of the mechanics of Left 4 Dead perfectly used in context, right?
Mm.
Like everything that happens in the trailer for the original Left 4 Dead, everything that every character does, you can do in the game, right?
Yes.
Like everything. Even like I realized this when I was going, like even when Zoe jumps at the end and is falling off of the edge and needs to be pulled up, that is a mechanic in Left 4 Dead.
Yep.
Like getting pulled up from a ledge. Like everything that you can do is something that you can look forward to in the game. It is one of the greatest trailers for a video game ever made.
Yep.
And it's also, by the way, a legitimately good zombie movie, like short zombie movie.
Yeah.
Uh, Even down to the final line where Lewis is going, "We made it," and then Bill turns and you see all of the zombies on the roof, and he goes, "Son, we just crossed the street."
Oh yeah.
Perfect ending. Uh, the Left 4 Dead 2 trailer is not as good, but frankly, it's just not as good because the Left 4 Dead 1 trailer was lightning in a bottle levels of perfect.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
It
and
is still
it's not
very
even
good.
bad. Like, it is a
No, it's
fantastic
good.
trailer. It's just that, what does it have to compare to? Oh, you're just
Right.
not gonna beat that.
So the Left 4 Dead 1 trailer was literally a short, like 2-minute zombie film, right? Like that's the
Mm-hmm.
best way to explain it. They're going through a street, they're fighting, and they need to fight zombies and make it to the other end of the street. They introduce the characters and give each of them like one line, basically to give you a sense of their personalities. They fight the zombies, they make it to the other end of the street, and then they set up like, oh, this is what the game is going to be like. You could not be more hyped for playing the game after watching that trailer. Be like, holy crap, this is what I'm in for. And that's the thing. The best thing about that trailer is that is actually what the game is like. Like, it's not just selling you on, it's not just trailer fluff.
Right.
Like, everything they do in the trailer is a thing in the game. And Left 4 Dead 2's trailer, they do it more like instead of being a short mini movie, they do it more like it's an actual trailer, like for a zombie movie. So they have various scenes that are broken up, and they're very good. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. Like, it is also an excellent trailer. It's just that the original Left 4 Dead trailer was like lightning in a bottle levels of perfect.
Yep.
Like the original Left 4 Dead trailer is like it. There is so much hype from Bill going, "Son, we just crossed the street," and you turn and just see the waves of zombies in front of you, where it's like, man, I gotta play this game. Uh, Now with that said, as it's interesting because the original Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2, years and years ago when I first got the game, Left 4 Dead 2 had already been out for years, but I went and bought the original Left 4 Dead under the theory that I found it for like $5 in a bargain bin, and I figured, well, what's the difference? Then I got Left 4 Dead 2, and I'm like, wow, even though I do really like Left 4 Dead 1, Left 4 Dead 2 is very clearly and noticeably better, kind of. It's really weird. The maps in Left 4 Dead 2 are noticeably worse, with
Yes.
rare exceptions.
Yes.
Like, the best way to play Left 4 Dead is actually to play the Left 4 Dead 1 maps on the Left 4 Dead 2 engine, uh, which are great.
Yeah. Like the
That's
engine is
like,
a massive, just so much better.
yeah, it's so much better. And it's really weird because if you had asked me how to improve it, I probably wouldn't have been able to give you anything because Left 4 Dead 1 is a perfectly functional game on its own. More than that, like, it's very good. But it's just an improvement in every way. Like the new special zombies make everything better. The way that the AI paces things out, it's just better.
Yep.
It's just that the maps in the Left 4 Dead 2 levels are more open-ended, and as weird as this sounds, in a game like Left 4 Dead, that's actually a bad thing.
Yep.
Like, you actually want the levels to be very linear and to go from one end to the other because you want the impression of a gauntlet, right? You getting lost in these games is not fun, and you
Nope.
can get lost in some of the Left 4 Dead 2 maps. With that said, the final level of Left 4 Dead 2 is probably my favorite level in any of the games. That's the bridge level.
Mm-hmm.
Uh which anybody who has ever played the games will immediately know what I am talking about because the level is just one giant bridge and you need to get from one end to the other. It's incredibly difficult. I I almost never get to the end of it without someone dying. Uh it's not easy, but it is so satisfying. It's such a fun level. And that's the thing. It's the best level in Left 4 Dead 2 because the entire level is go from one end of the map to the other, run, right? It's
Right.
just the gauntlet. Uh like there is nothing else to it. There's varying heights and things, you have alternate, routes to take, but essentially it's a straight shot to the ending. And the other great levels in the game that I could think of are again really really small scale, like the one in that you have in a carnival stadium in like where they have like a rock concert
That
playing.
is a pretty good level.
Yeah, but once again, you're in a very enclosed area. It's just hold out till help arrives. Go, right?
Yep.
Uh,
I do like the carnival level in general.
the carnival level is one of the better maps in Left 4 Dead 2. However, even that one, like there are a couple moments in there where like you can get lost that never really happens in the original Left 4 Dead. But you're right, that's one of the better overall levels in Left 4 Dead 2. Uh, and the other great level, I love the sacrifice. They actually do a really really clever thing in that level. So they have they add a bonus level. I don't know if you've played this or not. You probably have if you have the
Yes.
PC version. Right? Yeah.
Yep.
If you have the PC version, like it just comes with it. They have the sacrifice level where they add a level where you play as the original cast of Left 4 Dead, and one of you needs to stay behind and sacrifice yourself. Now, you might think that this would be a problem, but quite ingeniously, and like really ingeniously, they add an achievement for if you sacrifice Bill called Kill Bill. This is a really, really clever way of doing it because it essentially eliminates the argument of who will sacrifice yourself, right?
Whoever
Like
chose Bill.
whoever played, what was that?
Whoever chose Bill.
Right, whoever chose Bill will sacrifice themselves, and they won't feel like they lost anything because there's an achievement for it. It's an extremely clever game design choice. It just kind of solves the problem automatically. And the other thing about Left 4 Dead 2 that's kind of bizarre is that like Left 4 Dead 2 is still being updated by Valve. Like not super regularly anymore, but let me check on Steam cuz there's something on there. Yeah, back in August they had a patch update and they added like a new map, The Last
Really?
Stand, just a couple like it was a relatively long time ago now. So they do update it with patches and things fairly regularly. Like they did in past August, and they even add a new map in 2020. Now you go, oh well, that's 3 years ago. Well, yes, but that's also like 9 years after the game came out,
Yeah.
and they added a new map.
It's like they're
Like,
still updating Team Fortress 2.
yeah, and
Not
like
well, but, enough.
exactly, and it's the same thing. This like they're still adding patches to Left 4 Dead 2. Like not frequently. They're not doing it all the time, but the fact that they still feel like there is enough life in the game that they need to be updating it is kind of incredible. Like it really is. It's just such a masterful game. It's one of those games that under the radar, like whenever I think of my favorite games, it doesn't I normally don't mention it until somebody brings it up, and then I go, "Oh yeah, Left 4 Dead 2, definitely on the list."
Oh, yeah.
Uh, because it's just so replayable. Like, I'm always satisfied when I play it. Like, I'm never not enjoying myself when I play Left 4 Dead 2. Uh, there's always a sense of accomplishment. There's always just enough odds that you could lose that you feel like you've actually done something. You know, it gets that balance just right. It's a great game. And JD Cohen says, uh, Back for Blood video shows Crow B Cat's Back for Blood video shows just how much better Left 4 Dead was in execution. It's not even close.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yep,
there's
you're absolutely
nothing
right.
I can think of that Back for Blood does better than uh uh sorry, not Team Fortress 2, Left 4 Dead 2.
Left 4 Dead. Yep.
Like and it's
Yep.
sad because, it's some of the same people, but at the same time it's like, maybe you should have tried something else or just done it a different way or tried so hard not to be, like it's one of those things where I feel like they were trying to be Left 4 Dead but also like trying to be their own thing when in actuality they should have just copied Left 4 Dead. Brought it up normal, didn't put in the different what you call it, different like rogue like elements, all the
Yeah,
different little things.
that's the thing about Left 4 Dead, though. It's so replayable already, and it's already so, like, basically perfect
Right. And it's
that what do you, like, do you need a sequel? No, not really.
yep.
To be honest, there was a big criticism. I remember it was a huge controversy when Left 4 Dead 2 came out of like, seriously, a sequel to Left 4 Dead this quickly, and then people played it and were like, "Yo, actually, this game's really good." Like it's a whole thing. I suggest reading like the Infogalactic article on it because it's very entertaining. There was like a protest group that was like against Left 4 Dead 2. So Valve invited the head of the protest group to play Left 4 Dead 2 like in advance and then review, and then like he came out of it and said, "Yo, actually it's really good." Uh we were wrong. Uh which I wish that more game companies had that type of balls, right? Uh
Oh yeah.
that,
Like
that that's great. Great story.
like
Let's
the best
see.
part about like Half-Life is just how much they stuck with like sorry, not Half-Life, Valve, especially with like Half-Life and stuff like that. They just stuck with the gamer community. We need people who work on Half-Life. Okay, we will grab all the best modders for Doom, who showed up in the paid collections that Doom released every now and then. We will do this, we will do that, and just in general, just make sure what gamers want is what gamers get. And then it's like, well, they didn't really need to do anything else because then it's like, like you don't need a focus group, you don't need a $1 million, executive to tell you what to do or anything like that. It's literally just, you know, uh, yeah, we got what we needed.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things. Valve has my all-time favorite game series, which is the Portal series.
Yeah,
I absolutely love those games. They're masterpieces, both of them. Portal and Portal 2
yep,
is what I'm talking about, by the way. Uh, both, and I don't even really separate them in my head. Like, if you ask me to rank them, it's like it's so hard to choose. Now, years on, in retrospect, probably the original Portal is a little bit better, but I'm even very hesitant in saying that because it's like, I don't mean to imply that I think that Portal 2 doesn't deserve to exist on its own. I
right,
absolutely do. Like, I think that it deserves to exist as the game it is. You know what I mean?
yes.
There was a period of time where there were people like Matthew Matosis, if you know him, the video game critic. Uh,
S tier.
absolutely, yes, S tier, absolutely one of my favorites. Like, and he's one of those guys where like if he says something, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I take what he says seriously before I dismiss it. Right? I don't just
Yeah,
go, no, that's stupid. He was not a huge fan of Portal 2, and his big thing was that the original Portal was innovative, which he's correct about. It was. And he is also correct. That's probably the reason it's a little bit better. And Portal 2 was a little bit too samey and didn't innovate enough. And he was disappointed didn't use like the new f-stop mechanic that Valve had reportedly been workshopping beforehand, and it didn't. While I do get what he's saying, I don't really agree with him. Like, in the end, Portal 2 did what it set out to do almost perfectly, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it had a very specific goal. And yes, you could argue that it was a little bit too focus test or whatever, but you know what? It's also, like, probably the funniest game that I've ever played. Uh, some of the jokes in Portal 2 are, like, absolute S tier, 10 of 10. Uh, I still quote some of them sometimes, like Gladys talking to Chung, going, "Look at you, flying through the air like an eagle, piloting a blimp." Uh, Amazing line. Uh,
All of Cave
some of
Johnson.
Wheatley's lines, yeah, everything that Cave Johnson says, where it's like, okay, like, would I guess what it comes down to is when I think of Matthew Matos's criticism, it's like, would I have rather not gotten Portal 2 as it was? And the answer is no. Like, because Portal 2 as it was is already really great. I can't really be mad at it. Uh, Now, with that said, is the original Portal better? Well, yeah, but in a sense, it was always going to be better, right?
Yep.
Like, it innovated. Portal 2 was a sequel. It was a sequel, though, that did everything you could possibly ask a sequel to do. It upped the graphics, it upped the stakes, and it very smartly decided to take the comedy in a different direction because it knew it couldn't rely on surprising the player anymore, which was one of the big things the original Portal did,
Yep.
right? So instead, it went bigger with the comedy, which is a risk in itself, but it was very, very funny. Also, the portal to the moon moment at the end of the game absolutely killed me.
Yeah.
Just ingenious storytelling, ingenious joke, everything about it. 10 of 10. Uh, the original Portal, though, yeah, like, it is my go-to for how to tell a story in the medium of a video game, because Portal is a story that is genius, but it is genius because and only because Portal is a video game. Like, it would not work in any other context. And everything in Portal is pushing towards the what seems to be the inevitable ending of the game, but that's a surprise ending at the same time, right?
Right.
Like, when you reach it, it feels inevitable, but when you started the game, unless you knew the plot in advance, I guarantee you did not think it was going there. And there are
Mm.
things like, to understand Portal nowadays, you need to understand what games were like at the time. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah.
like, puzzle games were not expected to have boss battles at the end. They just weren't. You know, if you were playing a puzzle game, you were not expected to have a boss battle. Also, games with disembodied narrators were common, right?
Yep.
Now, other games since Portal have played with the idea of the disembodied narrator, and games before Portal played with it, like Bioshock. Nevertheless, the idea of there being a disembodied narrator is not necessarily something that you would question when you started the game. So, it's also like the first time you play Portal, you need to understand that with Gladys, who became such a meme character later on, but was brilliant in the first Portal. Like, what you need to understand with Gladys too is that you didn't really know if it was an actual AI speaking to you or a recording until a pretty good way into the game. Like, they intentionally made it sound as if it was just a recording talking to you until you reach, like, the turret level, right?
Right.
Up until that point, Gladys could have just been a disembodied voice. And the subtle horror elements that are there, like the Ratman dens that you find behind the walls, like, these are all optional areas, which is one of the reasons that Portal is so brilliant, that you can find them. They will literally change nothing about how you progress through the game, right? Like, you can not find them and you would still be able to complete the game. But if you do find them, it adds this context of, like, okay, something really, really strange is going on here. That's why the companion cube level is so brilliant. One of the reasons that the companion cube level is so great is because, yes, it is a very funny joke, right? As a joke, it's fantastic. You've killed your only friend, the whole thing, the way that Gladys messes with you, it's really funny. But it's also like the first time in the game that you're just kind of like, wow, you're kind of just trapped in a laboratory being led through a maze by a psycho, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you're sort of in this horror zone, and the way that they introduce the mechanics that will allow you to escape, white walls get you out of there, and how you, right, like all of these things, it's just so masterfully paced. And I just really, really love the ending of the first Portal. Don't get me wrong, the ending of Portal 2 is great, but there's something incredibly cathartic about just the fact that you end up on the outside of the building, you see the pieces of the robot falling around you, and then just fade to black. It's just an incredibly cathartic ending, right?
Yes.
With the twist of the Still Alive song afterward. Uh, the reason that Portal works as well as it does is because Portal is playing off the tropes of video games. The disembodied narrator, the fact that puzzle games don't have bosses, the fact that you going through a series of puzzles is just sort of expected in a puzzle game. Like, what happens when you boot up a game? You go through levels, right? You don't really
Yeah.
question it. That's just how it works. So, when you reach the point of the game where you're going behind the scenes, it's this brilliant subversion of expectations, but at the same time, it's not just that. It's set up. Every moment in the game is set up very carefully. From the Ratman dens in the background, if you look around and pay attention, to subtle clues in Gladys's dialogue. And there's also just the fact that Gladys is such a brilliantly written character. The way that she tries to negotiate with you as you're going through, it's very, very funny, but it's also very clever, right?
Yep.
Gladys is trying to literally mess with the player. She's trying to convince you to stop playing the game until you finally reach her in this boss battle. And it's like when you started Portal, you were not expecting there to be a boss battle. That's not how puzzle games are supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
you know, you're just supposed to progress till you reach the end of the game and then it's over. But by the time you face Gladys, it's like, yeah, of course it was leading here. It was always leading here. It could never not lead here. That is good storytelling.
Yep.
And that's why I love the Portal game so much. Portal 2 is not as innovative, for sure, and I do think that my biggest criticism of the game is that the final battle with Wheatley is way too similar to the Gladys fight. Uh,
Yeah.
it
The
always it almost lets me down, and then you get the portal to the moon scene, and I'm picked back up, and I go, all is forgiven.
this is all I've
It's always like,
ever
man, that's
wanted.
the climb. Yes, it's like that's the climax. That was kind of lame. Like I thought there was gonna be this big as like, holy crap, do I need to portal the moon? And then I just started laughing for like 5 minutes, and I said, okay, fine, game, you win. I'm back. You got me back. You lost me, and you won me back. Uh, you're right. It's all I ever wanted. What's the portal to the moon?
Mm-hmm.
Also, this is almost neither here nor there, but the Portal 2 co-op is probably my favorite co-op of any game ever. It's so good. The puzzles are so good. The dialogue is so good. The fact that one of the stories in the co-op dialogue involved a bird attacking Gladys, and now Gladys has an existential fear of birds from her time as a potato. Genius. Anything you want to add before we go, Ben?
Nah. Thank you guys for watching. Do try out Risk of Rain and other things like that. They are much more friendly than I think anyone gives them credit for. We do need to support creators who create good things, not so much because of some sort of moral judgment, but just because they're fun. Uh, we are at the point where people are not making things because they're fun or whatever. They're making things because they have a message, and they think that what they're doing is fun. They are wrong, and must not be rewarded with cash money. So, choosing Valve, choosing other things, it doesn't matter what happens for some of this stuff. But as long as, we're having fun and we're relaxing and we're serving the Lord and we're not, just sort of disappearing into nothing and being nothing. Um, we can have some fun with it. But
Hmm.
you know, we'll see. I'm going
I
to
will.
melt.
I will say one last thing. I have a lot of the Total War games, and Total War in my mind is sort of like the Assassin's Creed series to me, in that every game looks amazing, but very rarely are they as good as they look. But there is one difference. With Assassin's Creed, none of the games are ever as good as they appear to be in the
Yep,
trailers. Total War, there are two exceptions. Medieval 2 and Rome, right?
yeah,
Those
sure.
two are great. And
I
every other Total War game is disappointing. But I don't want to give up on the series entirely because they did make two really good games.
I don't know. I enjoy the Warhammer series. Uh,
I will say I haven't tried the Warhammer ones yet. I'm still on the historical ones. I'm playing Shogun 2 and trying to enjoy it and not enjoying it as much as I wanted to. The Here's how you know with Total War, every positive review for a relatively newer game is it's like Rome or it's like Medieval 2, right?
yep,
Like they go finally back to basics. It's like Medieval 2. And then it's not, and then it's just disappointing.
right. Oh well,
Uh but Medieval 2 is pretty great. So, even though I've never come close to winning any of these games, I play them for hours and I just don't win.
that moment you don't use your mouse for hours on end and it just dies on you. I need a new mouse. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us. Have a good one yet.